Hello and welcome to episode 6 of Mountain Mindset. My name is Andrei Mandzuk. I'm a mental performance coach, professor of sports science, and the founder of Mzk Performance. This week I'm joined by Louis Parkinson. Louis is a former member of the Great Britain climbing team and a long-time climbing coach through his organisation, Catalyst Climbing. During our conversation, Louis and I chat about psychological performance, leaning upon his experiences as both an athlete and a coach. I appreciated hearing Louis' applied examples, based upon his own climbing experiences, and the experiences of those he coaches. On that note, let's dive into our conversation. Louis, thank you for joining us.
Hello, Andre. How you doing, man?
I'm good. Start us off here, Louis. Introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, okay. So I'm Louis Parkinson. I've been climbing for 17 years now. Nowadays, Nowadays, I make my living as a coach. I'm head coach of Catalyst Climbing, which is a large team of coaches all around London, and with loads of online stuff that we do. And yeah, I really, really like climbing, and I've done it for a really long time. Now I'm very happy that I get to teach other people to do it as well. And then, yeah, over time, I've competed internationally. I've traveled loads of cool places. I'm very, very, very lucky with the career I've had so far, I think.
And we're chatting a little bit before we went live here about how diverse the coaching offerings that you folks at Catalyst do.
Oh man, is my opportunity to just plug away? Yeah, I'll
Straight
go for it.
away.
So, all right, well, Catalyst, we've got all kinds of options. You can get a membership online, and you get training plans, videos, live sessions, Q&As with amazing athletes. So that's the online stuff. Then we've got private coaching in person at walls all around London. We've got a junior team, a senior team. We've got a masters team. We do quite a lot, and we focus mostly on. We run sessions mostly in bouldering walls because I think that's the facility that most people have access to nowadays. But we work with all climbers of all abilities, from novice climbers to GB team members who train with us. So yeah, pretty pleased with all the stuff we do, actually.
Yeah, like I mentioned, it's so amazing how diverse that is.
Well, thank you very much, Andre.
And then how about tell us something we don't know about you?
Oh, okay. So I saw this on the list of questions. I bet no one knows this. I'm better at table football than I am at climbing, I'm not bad at climbing. But you should see me play table football. I haven't had a good challenger in a long time, but man, I've got a cheap table football in my house that I bought off Gumtree, and me and my housemate have some really, really good games. I know it's like a brag, and a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm so good at table football." But then I've played a game against those people, and no, they're not so good at table football. So any challengers out there, give me a game of table football. I'm really keen. So I suppose, is that the sort of thing you're looking for with weird things?
Oh yeah, I'm curious how you got so good at table football. Was that like something from your childhood, or was that a recent kind of lockdown hobby?
I think it's actually quite similar to how I ended up getting good at climbing. So I as a younger kid, as a young teenager, I was one of those really shy, awkward teenagers who really struggled socially. I didn't find it easy to make friends at all. I found it a lot easier to just withdraw a little bit, and I'd read, or I'd pick up random hobbies. Um, so with climbing, I was really, really lucky that I just stumbled across this hobby where it was okay to be shy and a bit weird. It's not a team sport, so you could still get into it. And so I got like really absorbed in climbing. But at the same time, I had a friend at secondary school who, actually, I'm still friends with now. He's my housemate at the moment. And he was also quite shy and awkward, and we didn't really like trying to make other friends. So we just played a lot of table football. There was a table football at the school, so we just spent every lunch break, every break time, just playing loads and loads and loads and loads of games. So mostly a huge amount of practice, for want of having something better to do, mostly.
I think there's a transferable lesson there about just the practice time and the practice that's embedded in play.
Oh yes, and this is what I was hoping we were going to talk about today, because I this whole talk we were going to have is largely about like psychology or how we practice things, I think. And yeah, I've noticed that either it's something that I picked up quickly from climbing and started applying to everything else, or a habit that, or a skill that I've had since a young age. I do manage to get really absorbed and single-minded in stuff. Like, oh, we're already going way off topic, but I got a reflex ball. I don't know if you know what these are. They're like boxers use them for training. It's a headband with an elastic string and a ball on the end of it, and you've got to like punch the ball like that. I didn't have a climbing wall for the first few months of lockdown, so my partner got me that instead. And whoa, like I found that it could almost be described as like obsession or addiction with just random tasks. Like I'd pick it up and start playing with it, and then kind of before I realized it, I was like, whoa, it's 3 hours later, and I'm like drenched in sweat, and I just hadn't noticed the time passing. Like as soon as I failed, I'd like pick it back up again and carry on again. I think I find that sort of like that style of practice, like with climbing, you fall off, you try it again. With foosball, okay, the ball goes in the goal, you've got to start again. The games that you can start again really, really quickly and have that like instant feedback, I really enjoy and get sucked into quite quickly.
Would you describe that experience as like flow state or being in the zone? Is that comparable?
Oh no, I wish it was. No, I think for me the flow state is occasion. I wish everyone wishes they could just snap into the flow state on demand. But as I think you've had as well, there's like times in a climbing session or at a competition where I think, and I suppose what I describe the flow state as is when my mindset actually matches my physical capability, and I actually perform at the maximum difficulty I could with like complete confidence that that's what I was always going to do. So it just feels like you're absolutely crushing everything, and it always feels easy. To me, that's what the flow state feels like, which is very, very rare. Whereas I think for me, this like addictive nature I might have with practicing stuff is almost like really aggressively trying to pursue the feeling of that flow state. Like, okay, with that reflex ball thing, within like a good few minutes of practice where I keep dropping it and picking back up again, I might have like 1 or 2 seconds of like hitting it twice in a row and going, oh my God, I'm getting it. And then I drop it again. And then I'll like start again really, really quickly. So I want to have that feeling again. I think it's the same with climbing maybe is, yeah, that maybe that obsessive nature is wanting that feeling of control all the time.
It's interesting that you mentioned there that like matching of ability to task difficulty, because
Mm,
that's one of the key theories when it comes to flow state and classical flow state research is that there's this corridor that exists where if we're low skill, something has to be pretty easy for us to access that flow state, and if we're medium skill, the task has to be like medium difficulty, and kind of so on in this like positive relationship or corridor. And that's like one of the leading theories when it comes to where we can access that area.
So wait, because I'd not known about this sort of thing. I do like the idea that, and I can see it being true that if a challenge is like really specific to your level, it will engage you a bit more, and so it's easier to get into the flow state. But do you not think it's possible to get into flow state on easy tasks like Tai Chi or something like that? Would be something which is physically a relatively easy task, but it's about being really, really mindful. But I suppose these are slightly different things, no?
Yeah, and I guess physical ease doesn't necessarily relate to like technical or psychological ease.
No.
When you look at a task like Tai Chi, the movement might be physically not as demanding as bouldering per se.
Mm.
But
But the mindfulness you have to
yeah.
have around those movements is completely different. You're right. Yeah.
So hey, you've had a pretty storied career both as an athlete and as a coach. I'm curious, are there any standout moments throughout that time period?
Ooh. Okay. I mean, for me as an athlete, I think standout moment. There's lots. I've done for a long time. One of them I think would be getting onto the national team for the first time was really, really exciting. It kind of a double edged sword though, because for me when I was invited to join the team, it felt like this huge validation of all the work I've been putting in with my climbing. I felt I gained a lot of self confidence from it. I was really happy about it, and then I got booted off the team a year later, and then I had to like grapple with this difficult one of, oh, if I was getting all this validation and self confidence from that, now what do I do? Um, so it was actually also quite important for me, I think, to learn how to deal with that as well. And yeah, learned lots of very useful things being on the team. I got to travel and do international competitions. I got my ass kicked really badly. International competitions are quite hard. Yeah, getting on and then getting off the GB team would be one of my highlights as an athlete. I think then for most climbers, we have like the benchmarks of achieving certain grades. For me, my first V11 was really exciting because it was at the end of me trying to get to grips with outdoor climbing for the first time. I'd only climbed indoors for about 6 years. I'd never really been on rock at all. Then was on this very suddenly very steep learning curve of trying to learn how to climb on gritstone in the UK, which is the weirdest of all climbing. It's really subtle, it's really painful, it's very friction based. If like me, you're used to like campusing on jugs and swinging around on overhangs, gritstone is not good. It's not a good one to learn on. So for me, yeah, doing my first V11 on grit was really exciting because it was at the end of a 3-year process of having never really had any experience climbing on rock and really working at it for a good few years until I got to that point. So that was really exciting. And then with regards to coaching, I think I always used to say that my favorite thing about coaching was just how fulfilling it is to immediately see people adjusting what their own beliefs of their capabilities are. Because yeah, I'm sure you have this as well with your coaching. Very often people will say, "Oh, there's no way I can do that climb," and then they do it or they make progress, and you can see the excitement and the confidence that they get from it. It's beautiful. I love it. Um, but that's what I always talked about in the first few years of my climbing. What I didn't realize I'd enjoy so much is more the long term stuff of coaching. Like, okay, so there's a bunch of kids who I started coaching when I was quite new to coaching, who were like 9 at the time. Now we're like a good few years on, and all these 9-year-olds I used to teach are now like a head taller than me, absolutely stacked. And that's like really, really exciting to see that development in their climbing. Particular one that really stands out for me is a girl called Luna, who was the team captain of the junior team that I coached with Catalyst. She was team captain last year, and she's had quite a difficult time with climbing because she's very talented, as you might expect, but she puts a lot of pressure on herself. She also has a lot of other demands on her time. She takes her schoolwork really seriously, so she just often struggled with her mindset slightly, and she struggled feeling like she was having enough time for climbing to pursue it as well as she wanted, and whether or not it was something she even had time to pursue. So, as sort of like one of our methods to try and gain some motivation, we came up with, and I don't do this very often for myself. I'm quite process oriented. I don't very rarely set defined goals for myself. But with her, we sat down and decided, okay, this is the training we're going to do. These are the goals you're trying to aim for. And the goal we aimed for was there's a series of competitions in the south of England called the Blockfest series. There were 5 or 6 rounds, and the goal we'd set for Luna was make finals once in one of those 5 rounds would be awesome. And oh man, she in the first opportunity, so the first round of Blockfest, she flashed every boulder and came first, and then she was on the podium in every round after that. So oh man, that was very exciting. Just knowing how much work she'd put in. I didn't realize how like obviously I'm invested in my own climbing, but I didn't realize how invested I could end up being in someone else's climbing from sharing that journey with them for so long. But oh, I definitely teared up a little bit. That was a really emotional experience for me, I think.
Thank you for sharing that with us. I think there's two things I want to talk about in there. The first takes
Yeah,
us way back to the start of that conversation where we were looking at
go
the
on.
transition period between the validating experience of making the team and then
Mm.
how do we continue that good feeling and that validation maybe when that's taken away from us. How did you work through that if you remember back? Was there anything specific that helped you there?
Oh, it was difficult, but in a way it was okay for me because I think with my climbing I've kind of always had the focus of I started doing this because it was really, really fun and I loved doing it. And I don't, like I said, I don't really set many goals with my climbing, but one of the goals I set for myself quite early is to never ever take it very seriously at all. And so that was then something that I found really difficult about being on the team is I always enjoy climbing as this it's an area of my life where I get to be really free and I get to express myself and I don't have to take it seriously. But then being on the team, no, you do have to take it seriously. And I found that a little bit difficult. So one thing I did like about not being on the team anymore was that I could relax again, and that was quite nice. So I started looking at the positives, and I also, oh man, I found it a lot easier going to competitions, just like not international competitions, but just smaller competitions around the UK, not having a massive target on my back as whoa, GB team climber, you can beat this guy and feel good about yourself. I was just yeah, it was nice just being a climber again. Um, And then aside from looking at the positives of what had changed with me not being on the team anymore, I also just started like really. I do it a lot with my students now of trying to really in a really focused way actually think through what emotions I'm feeling and trying to identify them, and then trying to rationalize whether or not those are at least the way I phrase it to myself is okay. I might work out with the GB team. I'm feeling embarrassed and sad and frustrated, and then I'll think through a bit more and go, okay, so let's look at embarrassed. Why am I embarrassed about this? And I'll start rationalizing it, going, okay, I'm embarrassed because I think that these people might suddenly be judging me, or everyone thinks I'm a worse climber because I got kicked off the team. And so then once I've like labeled and identified that emotion a bit, then I can go to that final step of asking myself, is that a helpful thing for me to feel? Or would it be better for me to be the boss of my own brain and choose not to feel this anymore? Now that I've rationalized it and realized that actually I don't really care that much what all these strangers think of me, and then yeah, I'm going to start stepping back from this emotion a little bit. So that's the sort of thing that helped me at the time, and it's quite nice because I think one of the things that helps me a lot with my coaching is having very direct experience with a lot of the stuff that people are going through. So I had a student recently where it was kind of exactly that. His parents were telling me, "Oh, it would be great if you could do some sessions with him." He was on the GB team for ages. He's just lost his place on the team, and he's absolutely crushed, and he's lost all his motivation. So, yeah, we got to it, and it's gone really really well. He's I think feeling a lot better about stuff. And this is what um I think the ultimate lesson I learned from losing my place on the team is that I'm only ever climbing for me. The only person it really matters for is me. So cool, I'll carry on doing it just for me. And so I think that's what I still focus on now, is just making sure that I'm doing it for me and enjoying it all the way through.
Oh, I mean, congratulations on working through that. I think that point
Oh, thanks,
about
man.
naming emotions and being able to sit with them and
Mm.
rationalize them, that's such a transferable skill to bring to your coaching. I mean, your clients and your athletes must be so grateful that you bring that and you inform your coaching with that experience.
Yeah, it's a really helpful thing to do. I mean, I'm obviously still learning about it. Like I had another one of the Blockfest rounds where I would always go in the morning and watch all the juniors compete because I teach a load of them, and then I'd do the seniors in the afternoon. And I just had a session in the morning where, with one of the junior team members, I'd like given this whole explanation about rationalizing our emotions and all this sort of stuff, and it was great. They understood all of it. And then I started my competition, and within about 20 minutes, they suddenly spotted me like outside the competition going, just trying to calm myself down again because I was not handling my own emotions very well at all. But well, we learn as we go.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you're only human, right? And I think that only makes it more powerful for the athletes when they see you, competing currently and going through similar challenges, kind of alongside them, whether that's in the
Yeah,
afternoon division or.
yeah. I think it's yeah, it is really really something that I prize quite highly in my experience as a coach. Is that yeah, even nowadays when I'm talking about the stresses we face in competitions and training and the training we do around it and how we can manage our tactics, yeah, it's still something I'm doing currently. So it's still something I'm learning about. It's still stuff that I'm gaining knowledge in that I can pass on to students. So yeah, very very happy that I do still get to have direct experience with it.
And the second thing I wanted to highlight there is you mentioned goal
Yeah.
setting a couple of times, and you mentioned setting of these outcome goals. And I think very often in coaching and sports psych, we shy away from outcome goals and we make it all about the process, which is
Mm.
really great, except that academically in a lot of literature, outcome goals are linked to huge spikes in motivation. When we set
Yeah.
aspirational outcome goals, I want to podium, I want to make finals, that becomes a massive motivational like North Star that we can then center the
Yeah.
rest of our training around. So even if it's like, I want to make finals at Blockfest in 2 months, then it comes down to, well, how am I spending the next 8 weeks? Like, if this is what my outcome goal is, how can I design the process? And so that reverse
Mm.
engineering, I think, can be so powerful on from a motivational standpoint.
Oh,
Um,
definitely,
and
man.
something we often fail to acknowledge when we're looking at like, oh, don't focus on the outcome. It's like, no, the outcome's fine. Set that and then
Yeah.
break it down from there.
Exactly, man. No, like I said, it's not something I. It's difficult to say because I know also obviously most people do set goals. I'm in no way am I saying this is a bad way to do it. I'm just from my view, I've found that for me it's not been the best way, and I found another method that works for me. On the other hand, you might make the very good point of, oh, Louis, if you had set some goals, you probably would have been world champion by now. But but who knows? I'm quite happy. I don't think I would be world champion by now, by the way. Just to clear that up, that was sarcasm. But yeah, I've tried to always set myself. I do have mini goals, but usually I've just focused on I want to make myself better at climbing every single day. And if I keep focusing on just that, that's quite a nice. I like focusing on those small little bits of incremental progress. And then for me, it's nice because I can just step back. I don't have to worry about goals. I just focus on enjoying myself. But I still do start putting in all these different like habits and things that do push me to be better and better and address weaknesses and all this sort of stuff. With obviously the ultimate goal being that when I go to competitions or I go to climb on rock, I'm a better, stronger climber than I was before, and I will have more chance of doing better. But different for everybody.
Yeah, and I love to hear the short-term focus there and how you mentioned incremental progress, how you're taking those building blocks day on day
I mean, it
and
might
not
just
getting
be that
too far ahead.
it might just be that I have a really short attention span, so I just focus on one day at a time. That's fine for me.
We touched on it a little bit during that, but I'm curious if you could expand on it. Just about challenges along the way, any particular standout challenges, how did they affect you in the moment?
Ooh.
And then now looking back with the benefit of hindsight, how have they affected you kind of with that perspective?
Okay, so I think definitely something that slowed me down would be injuries. Um, I I think loads of climbers did this. I got really excited about climbing when I was young. I climbed for like 8 hours every day. I never rested. I never stretched. And of my 17 years of climbing, I'm a lot better nowadays. I rest, I stretch. But in the first 10 years or so, I reckon at least like 2.5 years of that is me either not climbing because I was injured or me not being anywhere near my best because I was injured. Um, so easy one for me if I was to go back in time and tell a younger Louis what to do. I think just rest and stretch a little bit more. It you will be a better. I think this is how I phrase it now as a coach: is that the best way to continue progressing at climbing is to not get injured so you can keep going and practicing. That's about it. So I would have taken that a lot more seriously when I was younger. It's easy to feel invincible when you're like 18 and you're bouncing off everything, but oh, it catches up with you and you don't realize that it's catching up with you. That's the thing, is that I felt really, really strong, and I was getting stronger and stronger and stronger, and I was doing loads and loads of pull-ups, and slowly my elbows were going, no, stop. And eventually it got so bad, and I ended up getting banned from the climbing center, not because I'd done anything wrong, but because I would show up every day. I would like do a few climbs on an overhang, and as soon as I got back down to the ground, I was going like that, and I still kept coming back every day until one of the coaches went, "Okay, Louis, I'm sorry, you we have to not let you into the climbing center because you're not taking care of yourself anymore." This is when I was quite young, by the way. I don't do this sort of thing anymore. This is when I was like 14 or 15. So yeah, definitely taking my time a little bit more. Um, I think the other thing that definitely held me back enormously as a climber is not. I was rushing to do hard things in any form at all, rather than focusing on doing loads of things well. So, okay, by that I mean that nowadays the vast majority of my practice is spent on easy or medium grade climbs that don't suit me. And I repeat them again and again and again until I'm happy that I'm doing them, not just doing them. I don't want to just be able to do the climb. I want to be the master of that climb. I want to know all the different ways I could do it. I want to know exactly where the best bits of the holds are. I want to be able to climb it with fluidity and grace. So I focus a lot of my attention on that nowadays. And a lot of that is correcting mistakes I made in the past, because mostly what I did in the past is I would warm up really, really quickly, usually by clumsily just smashing through some overhangs. Then I would clumsily smash around on overhangs all the way through my sessions. And sometimes I'd drag myself up some hard stuff that suited me. But in the course of that, what was great is I got really strong, which was wonderful. But then again, what was annoying is I'd now learned really not much good technique at all. And now I'd also got quite strong, which almost acted as a barrier to learning good technique, because anytime I was in trouble, I could just pull myself out of difficulty and just carry on with the climb. So, yeah, I think my advice would be focus on doing a wide variety of styles of climb and doing them well early on, and it will make so much difference. Because, yeah, I've got to an okay level of climbing now, and I've been doing it for 17 years or so. I know many people who have got a lot better than me in a fraction of the time by learning to pay attention to that stuff early on. It really makes a difference.
Hey, how did you learn that? Because it seems like there's a lesson that you learned in there around
Oh,
that practice style. I'm curious how you learned that or what prompted that.
I mean, I think for me, it's like a whole combination of things that I slowly got the reputation. Like, it ended up with me having my Instagram nickname, Captain Cutloose. But I definitely had like reputation for not knowing how to use my feet, and for I think I definitely had a reputation for being a very strong climber, but not a good climber, not a technically skilled climber. And I think the one that always drove me nuts is I would go to loads of competitions, maybe arrogantly, but quite confidently thinking, I am easily strong enough to win this. I know how strong I am. I know how strong the other people are going to this. I should easily win this. And I very often didn't even make finals. And so, yeah, with competitions, I saw over and over again, yeah, being strong doesn't really help you. Like, an easy one for me is sometimes I might be the only one who did the really hard, really overhanging climb. And it took me 30 tries, so I got 1 point from it. And yeah, maybe no one else did that one, but I only got 1 point from that climb. And I was also, because I wasn't a very skilled climber, the only one who fell off a bunch of V2s and threes and lost loads of points there. So eventually I saw from my lack of success in competitions that being really well rounded and really consistent is what helped you climb well in competitions, not just being strong and pulling hard on bad holds, which is kind of all I was good at until then. So yeah, that was a pretty powerful lesson for me. Then when I looked at it in my coaching, I saw I it's weird because I obviously do a lot of like campusing and stuff, but I'm actually not that focused on physical strength training for climbing. I'm obviously now I'm much more focused on efficient movements and mindset in climbing, because those are the things that help me back the most. And then when I work with different students, it's I wonder if you've noticed the same, Andre. It's very rare to come across a climber where the only option for them to improve in their climbing is to get stronger fingers and stronger arms and stronger core. There's almost always another way. In fact, very often I've had one student who the main bit of advice I gave him was that he was banned from the training center, the training area, because he was trapped in this vicious cycle, almost like I used to be trapped in. There he would, so he has 5 sessions a week. He spends 4 of them in the gym getting mad strong. Like, he's on the fingerboard, he's doing loads of pull-ups, he's doing loads of weights, he's doing loads of core, and then he has 1 session a week where, and this is the session I saw him for, where he would get onto a climb, pretty much rip all the holds off the wall, pulling way too hard, and then wouldn't get to the top because he'd tire himself out and he'd fall off exhausted, and awfully then have the conclusion of, I'm still not strong enough, better go back into the gym again. And yeah, it was just massively overpowered to the point that it was then making it really hard to climb anything well. So instead, yeah, we focused on, okay, now a lot more climbing, a lot more focus on relaxing and being a bit more efficient. And wow, he just suddenly started rocketing through the grades because he was just burning through so much strength before.
Oh, I can totally see that, especially having the strength capacity where it's like your max level is actually way below what you could physically hold on
Oh
to.
yeah, yeah, and even with beginner climbers, like even on their first day, you see people coming in saying, "Oh yeah, I'm not strong enough to do these climbs." But as a coach, you can see them and the way they're climbing really easy climbs. You're like, you definitely are strong enough. I can see it even on your first day that you're like locking all the holds in like that. And yeah, to climb inefficiently is to show that you have an excess of strength. So great, let's use that excess of strength and learn how to use it more efficiently.
I think that final point is such a powerful reframe, taking
Mm.
what people could perceive as a weakness or a lack of ability and reframing it into an opportunity.
Man, this is actually something that I really focus on with students as well as myself, is phrasing of how you talk to yourself about your goals or your weaknesses or your performance is so important. So, for example, like, yeah, perfect point that we're talking about now. If I was coaching myself, and which I suppose I do, and I was to tell myself, I really need to sort out my technique because I'm wasting so much energy. I'm such a bad climber. Oh, this is terrible. You need to sort this out. It's somewhat true, but it's not very motivating. It's actually quite demoralizing. Instead, I would tell myself, just as true a statement, but with a completely different phrasing of, I'm really excited to address this area of my climbing because I already have kind of like this hidden opportunity to get so much better. Imagine how great it will be once I fix this. Or yeah, a very simple one for me was, instead of telling myself my footwork is bad, I would tell myself I'm really excited to have good footwork. And just those little changes of phrase made so much difference for me.
I love how there you're linking self-talk into what we'd call like challenge versus threat, and how
Mm,
every instance we can view as like a threat to our abilities or to our ego, where we're going to be embarrassed and shown up, or a challenge
yeah.
for us to rise and improve and showcase all the work that we're doing. And I think that that really comes out when you speak about it in terms of self-talk there.
It's a really, really big one. It's often I want to get into it with pretty much every student I work with because I know what impact having a good mindset can be in climbing. And often, like I don't go into it with every student because I think a lot of them might just go, this is just hippie rubbish. I'm not going to listen to this. I want to get strong. But when I do get the opportunity to talk about it, I think it's such a good one to discuss with people because yeah, I view it in this really black and white way of, okay, when we doubt ourselves, it just fills up our concentration. It just occupies our concentration to the point that we don't get to do things as well as we otherwise would because we're only half concentrating on it because our mind is full of all these thoughts of, oh, I worry I'm not strong enough. Maybe I'm not good enough. I worry I don't deserve to do this climb in some way. Whereas if you had an inner monologue, which was, or if you were confident and you didn't have any of those doubts, then you're essentially just clear-headed to be able to focus on the different aspects of movement or whatever you need to do a lot more intently. So yeah, I kind of phrase all of this as if we're retraining our inner monologue. I still my inner monologue varies. A lot of the time, what I want it to be is this unrelenting stream of positive energy of, you've got this, you've trained so hard, you've done loads of climbs like this, you're going to smash this one too. I still have moments where my brain suddenly goes, yeah, you're probably not going to do this climb, you're rubbish at slabs, you've always been rubbish at slabs. And then I work to fix it, but it still gets me sometimes. But yeah, having that positive inner monologue makes so much difference because I think that is, maybe you think the same, that is the main thing dividing top level climbers. The way I see it is that there are a lot of people who are strong enough to climb V15, possibly quite quickly, but there aren't actually that many who do it because I think the level of confidence that you need to be able to, like, okay, Sean Robutu is someone who I look up to in terms of mindset because I know he's been trained by his mum Robin Obersfield and his dad Didier Robutu, both top competition level climbers. But one of the things that they started doing with Sean Mobutu and his sister Brooke, who's now qualified for the Olympics, from a really young age in their climbing, they had pebbles that they'd written, I think just positive mantras like, I am the best climber in the world, which they had written on a pebble in their chalk bag and they just saw it all the time. And so now, coincidentally, Sean Mobutu is one of the many climbers who is strong enough to do these things, but he's also one of those climbers who's equipped with this just ruthlessly confident mindset where he walks up to V15s expecting to do it. And that makes it loads easier for him to do it because he's not having his mind filled up. I'm waffling because I know you know all this stuff, but I love talking about this stuff.
No, thank you for sharing that. That's I actually didn't know that. That's amazing. When we talk
Oh
about
man, yeah,
self talk, we can use self talk in two main ways, right? We can use it to reframe,
yeah,
which I think we talked about really eloquently early on in this conversation, and we can use it to offer affirmations or messages of
yeah,
support, which I think that's a prime example of.
yeah, exactly.
So I think we've touched on it a lot during this conversation, but I'm
Yeah.
curious if you could just give us a summary of what your mindset is when it comes to life, coaching, climbing, whatever direction you want to take it.
Mm. Oh man, that's a tricky one. I suppose I don't know if this is something that I've learned from climbing, or this is again just something that I've because I know my mum is very similar in this way, which I guess I get from her. But she's a bit into climbing, but it's definitely not something that she would have learned from climbing. But just insanely optimistic all the time. Um, it doesn't always pan out well for me because I will always assume the best of everything, which makes it very easy to be excited about everything and to try hard with everything. But obviously, then I get caught out if things don't go the way I expected. But with climbing or with loads of other tasks, I think that then translates into me falling off the boulder for the millionth time and always having the same reaction of, oh yeah, but the next go is going to be better. I'm going to get straight back on. It does make it hard for me to walk away from undone projects sometimes because I'm still, I'm really sometimes this optimism is a good thing. Sometimes it is just not helpful. I've got to the point of trying, it's a V13 that I want to do in England. I've tried it loads and loads and loads. I've got really close on it a bunch of times, but then I've had loads of sessions where I'll have got close a few hours before, and then 3 hours later, I'm still trying it, still really optimistic that I'm going to do it. And it's a partner of mine who's had to go, whoa, I think we should leave. I think, yeah, it kind of looked like you might do it 3 hours ago, but now like all of your fingers are bleeding, you're really cold. I mean, I always phrase it as, yeah, but it's within the realms of possibility that I could still do it if I tried really hard. And so that means I get stuck there, still trying it, still wearing out my fingers. Whereas other people go, yeah, I'm going to call this a day and be a bit more patient. So yeah, optimism is definitely something that I take in my climbing and in all of my other aspects of life. Just bear in mind that, yeah, it's a double-edged sword. You often get stuck with stuff when you should quit sometimes.
Oh, I can totally imagine how you can get sucked into that one last go syndrome where it's like, I
Mm.
think I could do it next go, and everyone's like, Louis, we need to go and get the ferry. Like we're coming back we're coming back
Exactly.
from France. Like we're gonna miss our booking, and you're like, come on, one more go. Oh, how about we go in the morning before we drive home?
Were you there with me trying karma? Because that's exactly it. How do you know that?
It's yeah. I mean that optimism though must serve you well in a lot of situations, right? Because
Mm.
so often we can be self-defeating, and it sounds like that's something that maybe you don't grapple with as finely in that instance.
No, it's a weird one because I feel like I do. I really, really love being really optimistic and trying hard with stuff, but then at the same time, I do feel like I sometimes struggle with just lack of confidence. Sometimes, I think, especially with competitions, I very rarely expect to win them. And interesting, what I've spoken about with loads of other competitors, but and it sounds like such rubbish, but I'll be really interested to talk about it with you. Is the idea that expectations are very important and often dictate the reality of what comes about more than people might realize. And I've had it again and again and again with Nathan Phillips, who you might know from the GB team, where we've gone to competitions together. We went to the Adidas Rockstars, and I was saying, "Oh, Nathan, it's so weird. I expected that I might climb 2 climbs in the semi-finals, and I climbed exactly 2 climbs. How weird is that?" And he's like, "Wow, Louis, that is weird because I expected to climb all the boulders, and I did all the boulders. Maybe you should have expected to do all the boulders, Louis." And annoyingly, yeah, that sounds like rubbish. But back to when we talked about how doubt or confidence might affect your ability to concentrate while you're climbing. Yeah, I only expected to do 2 boulders. So when it got to I've done 2 boulders, this one now looks really hard. I just doubted that I was ever going to do it, and I didn't do it. Whereas Nathan expected to do all the boulders and did all the boulders. Um, so I'm trying to be a lot better about that sort of stuff when it comes to competitions or working on projects. But it's a tricky one because often the reality doesn't always meet expectations, and then it's really hard to grapple with what to do after that.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Like we
Mm,
expect to do 2 boulders, and so for whatever reason we handicap ourselves and we do 2 boulders. And if you were to
yeah,
extrapolate that into a coaching example, if you had an athlete come to you and you expected a certain thing of them, you expected them to behave or climb in a certain way, then implicitly you might adjust your coaching style and your instructional methods and to
yeah,
match the expectation. I think we do that to ourselves, but it's
yeah.
harder to realize than when we do it with our athletes, where it's pretty easy to call
Hmm.
ourselves out and be like, whoa, 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 I shouldn't bring in that expectation to this session or this training season.
Yeah, exactly.
It's yeah, it's funny you mentioned the one last go thing because I think I'm prone as an athlete to giving something a go way too early. I'll do all the
Oh
moves.
yeah,
I'll do all the moves on a route and then be like, you know what? I think I'll go from the ground. And my climbing
yeah.
partners are like, you don't want to like work some links, like maybe do the crux move more than once. And I'm like, but what if? What if I do it from the ground? I've just always
Oh man,
I always kind of like I always want to know.
I'm
Even
totally with you. Go
the
straight in for the flash go every time, just in case.
yeah, it's a curious thing for sure.
Mm.
So how about
Hey,
mental
man.
skills use? I think we've talked a lot about transferable skills and different strategies or techniques or tools we can use to either enhance performance or help us focus during training or whatnot throughout this conversation. But I'm curious, are there any particular psychological skills or strategies that you employ or you employ in your coaching?
Yeah, I think as I said, I think the main one that I do for myself and with all my students is just that idea of being mindful about the language we use. And yeah, I do correct myself all the way through, but I'll explain it really, really simply to everyone as don't, or at least notice when you're phrasing things to yourself that could be described as like permanent and negative. For example, I am bad at slabs is permanent and a negative representation of myself, and also untrue. Because essentially, what I'd be saying to myself is that I am and always will be, whatever I do, going to be bad at slabs. So the reality of what I did with that phrase is that I just didn't bother practicing slabs. Um, when I started changing it to that more positive language we talked about earlier, like I'm excited to be better at slabs rather than I am bad at slabs. Then suddenly I started practicing them a bit more. I actually got better, which was then really exciting. So I practiced more at them. That change in language makes so much difference, and it is like all the way through your climbing sessions. Like, I even do it when the when I'm getting a student to describe the beta they're going to use on a climb. I start getting really, really strict about exactly how they describe it. So, for example, if they're saying, "Okay, I'm going to try and bring my hand up to there," I'll say, "No, say it again." They're like, "Oh, I'm going to bring my hand to that hole." Like, yeah, nice. Okay, keep going. And so I think giving those like more confident descriptions where you're describing yourself being like in control and confident all the way through on the climb does really start to make a difference. Um, Again, I know we've back. This is what this interview is supposed to be about, so maybe I shouldn't feel so bad banging on about it. But another climber that I would really recommend looking up to, not just in terms of how strong they are and good they are at climbing, but Max Milne, Scottish climber who's on the GB team. Oh, his mindset is something else because he takes a lot of inspiration, not just from other climbers, but from great sportsmen of other disciplines. Like he quotes Muhammad Ali a lot, and it works. And then what's really really interesting is speaking to him, and he doesn't coach people as far as I know. He just climbs hard, um, but he does a lot of meditating. He thinks a lot about his mindset. And then when it comes to he and I talking about, like, I'll ask him, "Oh, hey, what beat are we going to use for this climb? Or what's your plan working on this project?" He only speaks in these like aggressively confident phrases. Like when I asked, okay, perfect example. Showed him this climb at one of the climbing centers once, and I shouldn't have because I worry now in hindsight. I was like, well, that might have put him off. But basically, I explained this is an undoable climb. I mean, I'm not as strong as Max, but someone else I know who is really, really strong has tried it, and he climbs like V16 quite regularly. He says this is undoable, but yeah, have a go, Max. Let's see how you do. And he hopped straight on it and almost flashed it. Um, then I asked, like, okay, so what are you going to do now? And again, like all of his phrases, it was nothing along the lines that I might say of, I'm going to rest for a bit longer, then I might try these moves a little bit more. I'll see how I feel when I do this. No, all Max said was, I'm going to rest for 5 minutes, then I'm going to do it. And that's exactly what happened. And it was terrifying. So for me, he's a really good example of seeing just how much that strong mindset can almost amplify all of your other skills.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that with us. I think that's such a good example of how we can set our own boundaries or really define what the future is going to look like through how we talk to
Yeah.
ourselves. Do you find that comes out in your coaching a lot as well, in how the language that you use? Because a lot of what we're talking about ties in really well to some of Carol Dweck's work on growth mindset and how,
Yeah.
a lot of that is informed really by what people around us are saying, and we don't acknowledge that as much maybe as we should. So the example I can provide is that when I was doing a lot of coaching a few years ago, I had a group of young athletes who were very scared of falling from the top of the wall. Like they wouldn't go for it at the
Yeah.
top of the wall. And it makes sense because they're a lot
Oh,
smaller,
yeah.
like proportionate as a big fall. Um, we have some really tall walls here in Vancouver, particularly the Hive North Shore has very tall bouldering walls. Um,
Yeah.
and I've been to the Arch and some London walls, and it's a kind of a different game. They're very tall. And so one of the things would be like whenever an athlete went for it at the top of the wall, I'd encourage myself and all of our fellow coaches to celebrate that no matter what, over the top. Like run across the gym, high five everyone, like make a big deal of that because that, when we look at growth mindset research, that rubs off on athletes. Do you find that comes
I
across in your
love
coaching
that.
too?
Oh yeah, I love that. By the way, we do a really similar thing. One thing that I've always been really clear with when training all the other Catalyst coaches is that, yeah, as you say, the way you give praise to an athlete and when you do it and what you do it for makes a big impact on their mindset. So I've always been very clear with the coaches of, well, by all means, yeah, reward success with praise, but the thing that you should reward much more consistently and much more enthusiastically is just effort, whatever that might be. And for some people, it's them trying really hard to do their first pull-up, which, yeah, doing a pull-up is maybe not that impressive for some people, but they're trying really hard. So obviously that needs loads of encouragement. Or it might be, as you say, people just going for it at the top of the wall. So definitely, yes, something I'm always really clear about with students and with the other coaches, that it's putting in the effort is the thing to be really rewarded, because then, yeah, they're then motivated to put effort in, and they start wanting to pursue things that will require effort rather than just doing things that will mean they're successful, like picking out a climb which is maybe of a hard grade, but a style that suits them well. I'd always, obviously, as a coach, much prefer students going, I'm going to choose to do this climb, even though it's not as hard as I want to try. This actually really challenges me, and that's what I want, because climbing is supposed to be about being challenged. And they've been rewarded the whole time for challenging themselves, and they're rewarded for choosing to challenge them. So we definitely encourage that a lot. And then we started doing a new one with this is just on the junior team at the moment, but it's going quite well. We only did it for a couple of weeks and then we got stuck with lockdown, but I'm excited to introduce this again when we start our coaching sessions back up. But just with a means of building more self-confidence and doing a bit of team building as well. The new rule we've introduced for the junior team is, okay, every Sunday we have like a 4-hour training session. By the end of that session, at the end, we all sit around and stretch together for a little while. During that little stretching session, I'm going to go around in a circle, and each of you has to tell me 3 specific moments from today that you're really proud of yourself for. And then you also need to tell me 3 specific moments of other team members that you saw, which you're also really proud of them for, and that you think they should be proud of. And it's going quite well, because then we always do it in a really friendly way. It could be quite easy for kids when we're all sat around in a circle. It can be quite easy for kids to feel like they're put on a spot. But so far, it's been a really relaxed atmosphere. They don't feel stupid for suggesting things. And again, we're sticking with that same thing of rewarding them for even just the effort of trying to suggest something they might be proud of. We're like, yeah, nice, that's a great thing to be proud of. And sometimes it's things like, and that's what's really nice, because then they also, over the course of us going through all of this, they all get different ideas of things they could be proud of. So some of them will say, I finished this climb, I've been working on it for ages. And then someone else might say, I didn't finish the climb, but I tried really hard to say I didn't get too frustrated. And we're like, yeah, good thing to be proud of. Well done, you. So yeah, kind of whatever they say, we encourage them for it. But that's been a really nice one as well recently.
I'm curious, how did you learn that? Was that a lesson you learned from someone? Was that from some reading? Often when we look at growth mindset research,
Yeah,
we look at when we praise people for effort rather than success, we find that they're more likely to then go and try difficult tasks because they're not worried
yeah.
about being exposed as like not successful, right? Like it's a threat to their ego, similar circling back to what we are talking about before. Was that something that you picked up from some readings or from another coach or something you learned implicitly along the way?
I think it's actually, yeah, something I'd have learned implicitly along the way from a lot of the time with students or analyzing my own response to climbing. I think for me, and maybe this is the root of why I've always been very process oriented rather than success or goal oriented, is that climbing's really pointless. It's a really silly, pointless thing to be doing. And like, okay, if we're saying, yeah, my goal is to climb this project in the gym, what a transient, weird goal. Because yeah, by all means, yes, obviously it's great to be able to climb that and to push yourself to get to that level of capability, but random sequence of plastic holds, which is going to be taken down a week after, that's not something to be too hung up on. So I think for me, I kind of always realized, yeah, with climbing, it's almost, after a while, it almost gets hard to remember successes. If you're climbing mostly indoors, what was once, like, I'm sure I must have been really excited to have done my first V4, V5, V6, but I don't remember what those climbs were at all now. So I think for me, yeah, I was always slightly more focused on just the effort involved instead. And that's also what I really liked about climbing, because I think it can be really, really easy to feel accepted in the world of climbing, because if you just visibly try hard, then everyone around goes, "Whoa, it's so exciting! Yeah, come on, do it." So I think I always really enjoyed that atmosphere around climbing. But then also my experience with students, I noticed that being preoccupied with specific successes can be, yeah, it can be really damaging sometimes. Because okay, so perfect example is again a student on the junior team who, he just holds himself to such a high standard. It was demoralizing for me to see, and it was making his time climbing so difficult, because every single session I would watch, and as a coach, I would see him smash a lot of hard climbs, and he's often like a step above a lot of the other athletes on the team. And then when I'd ask him at the end, saying, "Oh, so how do you feel about your session? You enjoy it?" He's like, "Oh no, I climbed so badly," and he would point out, I fell off that climb, I fell off that climb, I fell off that climb. I never finished any of them. So no, not a good session at all. And I'm looking at it going, oh my God, the idea that I've just watched what I categorically would view as a very good session. Yeah, he says he fell off this climb, but I watched no one else in the center even got as high as he did on that one. So the fact that he's coming away from this session disappointed with himself and demoralized, oh yeah, okay, this needs fixing. So we focused a lot more on this idea of him constantly, and it was a task for him that at the end of every session, he had to send me a little list of, these are the things I'm really, really proud of having done. And obviously I'd give him loads of encouragement for doing that. And that slowly, over like a month or two, got to the point where he started regularly having positives, like positive reinforcement from himself, because he had like this long list of all these things that he was proud of over the course of loads and loads of sessions. And yeah, now it's, he's I wish I hadn't taught him that, because he's terrifyingly good now, and now has this really, really good mindset. And he's like a year away from competing in the same age category, like the senior competitions. So yeah, regretting that slightly. No more teaching for him.
What a hey, this is one of the things I love about having these conversations and these interviews
Yeah,
is I love seeing how well elite coaches and athletes mirror what we'd look at from like evidence-based practice as really good practice without having maybe studied that evidence. And I think that
yeah,
provides a really good validation for a lot of the scientific research we do in sports psychology, is that it makes it all the more valid when, you know, the best coaches and athletes in the world are stumbling across this just through trial and error and then
yeah,
seeing it as being successful, and then we can back that up in the literature. I think that's really just like really a validating moment for sports psychology as a field
yeah,
or a concept.
yeah, definitely, man.
You mentioned early on in this conversation you form a lot of habits and routines to try and get you closer to your process goals. You mentioned you like to try and kind of self improve every day and get better at whatever task it is that you're kind of
Yeah.
psyched on in that moment. What I'm kind of curious about is, what are some of those habits and routines? Is there anything that's been a real game changer for you along the way?
Oh man, I'm afraid it's going to be same stuff that we've spoken about already. I've got one new one though. Largely, again, it would be the language, which really, really helps me. The other one is kind of enthusiastically allowing myself to get drawn into that really like addictive, obsessive behavior with practicing tasks of, yeah, like as soon, not obviously with climbing, you need to remember to take rests. This is what messed me up beforehand. But with things like foosball, or with the, what's it, the reflex ball, or kind of really with like, I've discovered I'm rubbish to play games with, actually, because okay, I like playing table football because I like practicing skills and I like the feeling of doing it. And so it means as soon as someone scores a goal, I don't care if I lost or if they lost. I don't care. Just get the ball. Let's start playing again, like right now. So yeah, I get like pretty pacey like that with stuff, and which is not always that pleasant to be around. So when I'm playing against my housemate, and we played against each other for years, that's fine. That's how we play. That's how we play, and that's how we practice. When I play against anyone else, they're like, "Whoa, you're like really weird and aggressive." Are you being aggressive with me? Are you just being aggressive with the thing you're practicing? It's weird. So I think, yeah, enthusiastically throwing myself into allowing myself to be addictive like that, because I think that kind of just helps me log more practice time and get more practice with it. Um, and then I think the final one that I learned recently was learning to be a lot more mindful with stuff, with practicing movement in climbing, with just thinking about things I can do better with anything I'm practicing. It's made it a lot more enjoyable, and it's made it a lot more interesting to not just think about doing the practice, but to be like really aware of as many different things as you can whilst doing the practice. That's helped me enormously. Have you read a book called The Art of Learning by Josh Waitzkin?
I have. It's he's like a not a kite surfer, right? But is it foil surfing now? But he used to be into chess.
Is he? Yeah,
Yeah,
man, I didn't know
yeah.
about chess. I mean, sorry, no, I knew he was into chess.
That's the
That was like
book.
his
Yeah,
first thing from the age of 5. Then he did Tai Chi and then push hands,
yeah.
and now he like owns Brazilian Jiu Jitsu gyms, and he does what's foil surfing?
It's kind of like motorized wakeboarding almost. You're like standing up on a
Cool.
fin, so the board is elevated above the water, and the fin is just below the
Wow.
surface.
Very
Um,
cool. Well, yeah, for anyone who's not read Josh Waitzkin's book, The Art of Learning, it's not specific about climbing, but for me, that was one of the best books I've read about practicing things mindfully. He also talks a lot about performance mindset, which he is very experienced in now. Yeah, top recommendation. Really do read it.
yeah, for me that ties together a lot of threads in this conversation. Just
Yeah.
noting the similarities, and I can see a lot of that coming out in your approach. Whether that was something that was present before and reading the book affirmed it, or whether that was something you picked up from the readings.
I actually only read the book a couple of years ago, and as I
Yeah.
was reading, I was like, "Yes, this just chimes so well with so much stuff I'm doing." But it also, yeah, it felt like it validated a lot of my approach, but it gave me so many other ideas. He talked about so much interesting stuff. Um, but yeah, I won't say any more because it will just be spoilers. Go read the book, everyone. It's a great book.
This isn't on topic. I'm curious if you ever
Go on.
kind of got into musical performance or if you ever picked up an instrument, because
Oh,
it sounds like
yeah,
your learning
actually,
style would transfer really well.
yeah. I think that's often the thing that I hope most. When you ask new climbing students, like, "Oh, what other stuff are you into?" And there's certain stuff you kind of want them to be into because it goes really well with climbing. I found, yeah, martial arts and musical instruments and dance work so well for climbing because they're all disciplines where it's not just, as we talked about now, it's not just about doing it; it's about the quality with which you do it. Um, so yeah, I used to play. What did I play first? I played piano a lot when I was a kid. Then drums for a few years, which my parents did not thank me for. Then since then, it's been lots of guitar and lots of singing. I'm not very good, but I like it. Um, and again, same sort of thing. Like I drive housemates nuts with. If I've learned like a little section of chords, I can quite happily just play them round and round and round and round and round and round for a long, irritating time. Um, so yeah, a little bit of instruments. I'm not very good at it. I do a lot of drawing as well, actually. Lots of I used to do a lot of painting when I was younger, um, and that was again the same sort of thing of like with painting. I'd get home from school and start at like 10 and in the evening and be really excited about some painting I was going to do. And then yeah, before I knew it, it was like 4 in the morning. I was finishing the painting, but I just got like super absorbed in it again with the same sort of weird addictive practice mindset.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really clear when we talk about practice that that's something that would be so absorbing for you.
Oh yeah, man.
We talked about a lot of people in this conversation that have inspired you, but I'm curious specifically: is there any one main person that's inspired you along the way, and maybe did they give you any advice, or is there something you've learned from them?
Ooh, oh yeah, actually. Um, Something that I then had reinforced when I read The Art of Learning, and it's something that I've been advising to loads and loads of people as a method of building confidence. Because okay, we can build confidence just by having positive experiences which reinforce being confident. Um, and we can also do it by just changing our language and slowly changing our mindset that way. But yeah, it was Neil Gresham who taught me this when I booked a session with him ages ago when I was a young climber, and it was one of the most helpful ideas that I've ever had someone tell me in climbing, which was he basically like I went through with him and listed all of the things that I was unconfident about with competitions. I was worried about climbing on slabs. I was worried about bringing the wrong shoes. I was worried about running out of chalk midway up a climb. And it was just the really logical thing of, okay, so Louis, go and practice, do loads and loads and loads of climbs without using any chalk so that you can write down, or if you ever worry in a competition, oh no, I'm running out of chalk, you can recall all of those experiences where you did pretty hard, challenging climbs purposefully without using chalk, and you'll feel a little bit better if you're running out of chalk. And I've done this, I do the same thing with like in my training, I mostly climb in really, really basic, comfy, soft shoes so that when I put on really good shoes for a competition, it feels like an advantage rather than something I've been relying on the entire time. So yeah, that would be a huge one that I learned from Neil quite early in my climbing. I think is the idea of almost purposefully climbing or training under not perfect conditions, so that you're prepared for conditions not to be perfect and you're used to it all the time. That was a really helpful one, definitely.
What really stands out to me there is the difference between practice and performance, and
Yeah.
understanding that performance in practice doesn't necessarily transfer one for one, and how we
Oh,
can
definitely.
introduce these desirable difficulties during practice to over challenge yourself or to make the environment a little bit more unpleasant. You'll remember back to the World Cup with Yanya dropping a chalk bag at the second bolt, and then just tops it, just whatever, climbs to the top of
Yeah.
the route.
Exactly. No, it's the training that I do with the junior team now, and I've explained it to them as well, so they're on board with it. But we do a version of semi-finals practice, which is it's almost like this is the way I'd explain it to them, is it's almost like a simulation of a competition going as horribly wrong as it could possibly go. And we're going to practice with that kind of always being the circumstance. It always feels insanely hard. You're always tired. The climbs are always too hard. You're always running out of time. And then we're going to go to actual competitions, and it's going to feel like a walk in the park. It's going to be lovely. So yeah, we do quite a lot of that sort of stuff. Oh no, I said because I thought I was going to say something else, but no, I've run out of words actually.
Oh, I was just going to follow up that we did a really similar mock comp a few years ago with our youth team,
Oh
and
yeah,
it was like 5 on, 5 off format, and it was like,
nice. Yeah.
oh, but now you're on and you only have 2 minutes. Oh, now, but your chalk bag's gone. Oh, and actually, you're
Oh,
not climbing this bulge, you're climbing the one over there. Like we got the order wrong, and it was
nice. I
just
like
like
that.
that, like everything that can go wrong does go wrong type of situation, just to over prepare for use the mental skills you've got, like draw from your toolkit. How can
Yeah.
you reset? How can you face the challenge in front of you? Like, how can you control what you can control? Um,
I had a really interesting one watching how beneficial that experience was for somebody because okay, so the way I've been doing this practice with them is it's brutal. We basically just do a normal competition of 5 minutes on, 5 minutes off. We'll pick a series of boulders for them to try, but the extra brutal rule is that it's not just you're aiming to climb the boulder within 5 minutes. It's that you have to climb the boulder as many times as you possibly can within 5 minutes. And if you're not on the boulder, then you need to be on the floor smashing out push-ups instead. So for it's just 5 minutes of absolute horror show brutality in terms of like how physically difficult it is. What's quite interesting though is that the push-ups don't really tire them out as much for like climbing specific movements as you might think. You feel really tired and you feel really, really sweaty. But anyway, it sounds horrible, but interesting experience that I had was watching a member of the junior team. He tried this exercise for the first time and as expected, got just demolished by it. There was one climb where, because the rule is if you fall off, you need to do 5 push-ups straight away and get straight back on again, and there's nothing else happening for 5 minutes. And after like 3.5 minutes, he came over to me saying, "This sucks. I'm really not getting anywhere. This is stupid. Can I just climb it?" I was like, "No, I'm sorry, man. That's the rules." So he carried on, and he still didn't do the boulder, but he kind of got a little bit closer right at the end, and he felt a bit more optimistic about it. And then what was really, really cool is we came back next week. We were doing the same training again, and he asked, like, "Oh, can I have a go on that boulder?" Because he had already kind of got a sense from the previous session of, "Oh, I actually got a little bit closer at the end," and that was with me not being very confident. And so, yeah, okay, so he had another go, and it was glorious to watch. He just like lapped it 8 times in a row, smashed out push-ups in between each time, and the confidence he got from that was lovely. Um, so yeah, I think those sort of like adverse conditions style training work really, really well sometimes.
I think it goes hand in hand with a lot of just like how you frame it, right, and how you approach those
Mm,
exercises as a coaching team, and how the athletes come to understand them as part of the learning or the practice process, rather than
yeah,
we're just like thrashing you for no real reason.
yeah. No, no, no. I explained very clearly, and we talk a little bit more about and this is why we call it semi-finals training. Is usually in that format of event, the semi-finals are like a notch up in difficulty from the qualifiers and sometimes even from the finals. And usually, whereas in qualifiers, you might need to do 4 out of 5 boulders to get through to the semis. Usually in the semis, you might only need to do 1 or sometimes 2 boulders or get a couple of zones. And I know loads of other people have done far worse in semi-finals than they needed to because I just gave up too early because it felt like I was getting crushed. And I didn't realize that everyone was getting equally crushed. And all you needed to do was stay confident enough to get like one boulder or one or two zones. And yeah, so a lot of this is just teaching them, however tired you're getting or however demoralized you are from not doing your last boulder, hit the mental refresh button and just go hard on the next one, see what happens. So I think it's useful for that reason as well. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. When we look at creating internal forms of motivation, offering a structure or a rationale for why they might be experiencing difficulties in the now is like one of the key tenets of that, right? Being able to say, this is hard because, or this is hard, and as a result, you will be gaining this,
Yeah.
can be so beneficial.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
So, what's the future look like for you? If we're looking forwards over the next year, I mean, obviously this year has been pretty uncontrollable, but next year,
Yeah.
next 5 years, any future projects, any plans, within climbing, within business?
Ooh, okay. So lots of plans with business. We're wanting to carry on growing the Catalyst team. We've got some athletes we're excited to work with. We're excited to expand a little bit more, both like online and in person as well. So very exciting with that. With my own climbing, I'm again, I have quite loose goals. I want to carry on coaching because I really love it. I aim to carry on climbing as hard as I can and enjoying it as much as I do for as long as possible. And it's difficult because this almost feels like setting goals, but I don't set goals, so I'm not setting a goal. But my general aim is thinking that if I continue progressing the way I am and I manage to continue climbing without any serious injuries for the next 10 years or so, which I don't think is unreasonable, then I think it's quite likely that if I stay motivated and I stay training and trying hard as I do, that I might at some point climb a V15, which would make me pretty happy. There are specific ones which I'm quite keen to try. But I think for me, from a younger age as a climber, I was like that. I know that nowadays there are harder climbs than V15, but when I started climbing, V15 was the top level. I couldn't even imagine. I asked a coach to explain it to me once because I was like, I can see a V8 in the climbing center, and I can't really imagine how anyone climbs that. I don't even know what a V15 would look like. I can't imagine it at all. So for me, that's always been like this mythical standard to get to. So I would like to someday get to that standard. But other than that, man, no, nothing specific. I'll take another 17 years of what I've just had. It was lovely. More competitions, more traveling, meeting nice people. I'm very grateful for all the things that I get from climbing. So I'm not pushing too hard. I'm just happy to keep doing it and enjoying it.
Oh, and it's working out. I mean, clearly it's working out so well for you. And I love how well that links into like your mindset and your approach to coaching and athletics in general.
Well, thank you very much, Andrew.
So, what does your support system look like? Who do you have around you? Who's in your corner, either on an individual
Mm.
basis or an organizational basis? Is there any one or any organization you'd like to kind of shout out?
Yeah, a few. Okay, so definitely want to shout out the Lakeland Climbing Centre. It's a strangely named company. The Lakeland Climbing Centre is actually the company which owns Vauxhall West, Vox East, Harrowwall. I applied for a job as duty manager there when they first opened. I was one of their first staff members at Vauxhall in London, and since then they've put up with me for years. They now sponsor me as an athlete. They have helped. They've been enormously helpful with my own climbing and in supporting me, but they've also helped me support my business a lot. So yeah, huge shout out for LCC. Lovely chain of walls. I think probably the friendliest chain of gyms in the UK, as far as I can tell. Obviously, I'd be biased because I think they are, but yeah, universally non-stop good vibes in every center I've been in. They're really progressive with a lot of the inclusivity stuff they're doing as well. So no, really huge fans of LCC. I'd like to give maybe a bigger shout out to my mum, who aside from being a source of inspiration in terms of just her optimism and her dedication with a load of other stuff she does, now looking back on it as an adult, I cannot understand how she had time for this. But she came with me. She came with me to most competitions, and she still comes and watches me in finals if they're in London. But she came with me to every single national championship for a decade, and and to be clear, this was not exciting for her at all because we'd for a good every single round. It's been us going there, me all excited, going, oh, maybe this year I'll do well. And no, I never do. I still have never ever made finals. I'm always miserable about it. And then we drive home again, and she's one of the few people I listen to with climbing. She maybe can't offer good beta, but she's really helpful in teaching me to start talking through my emotions. She's really helpful in getting me to actually analyze my mistakes and what could go better and what could go wrong. So I still don't know if she's not that interested, and if this was just her like supporting her son a little bit. But even getting near my 30s, I still call her after every competition and go through like a full debrief with her. So definitely my mum, hugely helpful. And a last shout out would be my partner Katia. We've been together for over 10 years now. And wow, yeah, I don't even know where to start with how much support I get from her. So I won't go into it too much, but I don't really think I'd be able to do much at all without her by my side. So yeah, really deep thank you to Katia if she ever watches this. She probably won't, because she's sick of my climate stuff. But yeah, those would be the main ones I think for me.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Louis. I know this is a tangent, and I know we're over our allotted time, but
No, go for it, man.
you mentioned in there kind of some of the work that Lakewood Climbing Centre do in terms of diversity and inclusion, and I noticed
Yeah,
that's something that you use your own platform for a lot,
yeah.
showcasing people of colour, marginalised voices historically. Do you want to speak to that a little bit before we round off here?
Oh man. Yeah, okay. I'd summarize this as, yeah. So I do weekly. Well, I try to do them weekly. They're not as consistent as I'd like them to be, but I do regular takeovers of my Instagram account, as Andre says, from more diverse groups who often aren't very well represented in society and aren't easily included in things. Yeah, for me, it feels like the first time I've actually done anything genuinely useful with my climbing or with my platform. Yeah, obviously I love coaching people, but this felt like I actually had an opportunity to make some real impact. Just so I've got a large following on Instagram. So like, great, I have an actual platform. I can do something with it. I started off when Black Lives Matter suddenly gained a lot more media attention. This was also for me the time when I became a lot more aware of it, and I hadn't really realized until that point just how privileged I am in a multitude of ways. Mostly, I can list them right now. I'm white, I'm male, I'm straight, middle class, able-bodied. All of these things I now realize from having read more about it mean that the world is the world is specifically designed by people who tick all of those boxes. And it's much, much easier to fit in with that world if you tick all of those boxes. And sometimes the system is just ignoring people who don't tick all those boxes. Very often it actively discriminates against them. So yeah, I was excited to exercise the benefit of one of the things that I've gained through being privileged, which is to have this Instagram account. I started off by I would talk about a lot of stuff on that Instagram account, and I was posting stuff and I was like sharing things, and then kind of eventually I realized, one, I'm probably not expressing this as well as somebody who actually has lived experience with these things. And also, I kind of realized I'm just taking up room in the conversation when people don't need to hear from me about this. I'm not a very good source. So then I realized, oh, okay, yeah, much better use of the platform is this should be used to amplify voices that might not have another means to reach all these people. So yeah, that's mostly it. We've also introduced a load of inclusivity initiatives within Catalyst. It's something that I was then pushing all of my sponsors on quite aggressively, which I don't think was easy for them, because obviously I was coming at it from a perspective of, Catalyst is a very small team and it's very easy for us to implement all of the changes that we're really, really excited about. I was then giving some of my sponsors a really hard time saying, you need to make these changes now. And then sort of going, well, we have board members. And yes, while I on the phone to you, Louis, want to make these changes, there's like 50 other people involved. I need to work it out with all of them. I was quite harsh about it. So thank you also to my sponsors for putting up with all of that. And yeah, so now it's carrying on with as regularly as I can manage. I pay people to come on and do these takeovers. I think the next one we're going to have is actually first time I'll have a transgender climber rather than someone from a BIPOC background. So yeah, quite excited to diversify it even more. It should be quite nice.
Well, thank you for all the work that you're doing there. And quickly, do you want to
Great
talk
to
to some of those initiatives that Catalysts are putting in place? Maybe to inspire
Yeah,
some of our other organizations to do similar things.
yeah. So okay, so the main two inclusive. The way we're viewing it is that inclusivity, or is the goal, is for people to feel more included, and the means to that goal is increasing accessibility and improving representation. So one of the things which I realized with mild horror is that diversity within my own coaching team is quite poor. Gender diversity, not bad. Ethnic diversity, not great. Climbing is a very white dominated sport, very much so in the coaching scene as well. So, step one for me was reaching out to lots and lots of climbers of varying backgrounds who I know are interested in coaching, or have a lot of experience with climbing and maybe work as a teacher, and just asking if they were interested in training as a coach. Because it might have been something that they were interested in before, but they don't see themselves represented there at all. So some of it was just affirmative action in seeking out new coaches, which I was really excited to do. And annoyingly, we haven't managed to do any of that training because we've still been stuck with lockdown, but hopefully that's going to be in the next couple of months. So massively improving the diversity in my own coaching team. The other things that we're doing in terms of improving accessibility is one, that we're going to be having 6 scholarship places on our Catalyst Junior Team Academy. So it will be selection only, and it will be for 12 people, but 6 of those people it will be like full scholarship. They don't pay anything to us, they don't pay anything to the climbing center. They get free coaching, free access to all the gyms. But then last difficulty, because this is actually something that I think I just didn't do as well as I could have in the past, is that we did previously with Catalyst, we did every week run the BAME Climbers social group. Whoa, amazing. No, not amazing at all, though, because I realized the people who are wanting to benefit from increased accessibility to climbing aren't just going to randomly find out about the random social that I'm doing. So a lot of the work that we're going to be doing is going along with a lot of outreach, working with other charities, but not just going, oh hey, there's some free climbing if you want it. Yeah, come in. Maybe if you find it, but really like going into loads of different schools and going to loads of different communities and actively encouraging people to. And we've now agreed it with loads of climbing centres that at every wall around, well, with LCC anyway, at every climbing wall wait, how are you going to do this? So I need to explain it correctly. So okay, the better way of doing it, there are about 7 climbing walls owned by LCC in London. Every day there will be a free session at each of the different centres where climbers who might not otherwise be able to access climbing can come in for free. There'll be a coach there to meet them. So that would be something that we're going to start doing before we have the selection event for those scholarship places on the junior team, because what I'd really, really like is to not just have people who are already into climbing, and because I think to have already been into climbing, you might often need to be quite privileged to get to that point. But what I'd love to do is to have a process where a bunch of people who have never climbed before get the opportunity to try it for free. They then have a couple of months of free coaching to really, get to grips with it a bit more, and then are able to potentially try and apply to join this like scholarship place on the academy. That's what I'm wanting to put in place. So yeah, all going now, because the walls are opening up again. It's finally time. Very exciting.
Hey, well, thank you for talking through that with us and all the work that you're doing too. I think that's,
thank you, man.
I mean, that's so important.
That's
I know it's a change of theme from maybe we were talking earlier in the conversation about more performance psychology, but I think
yeah,
societal issues and psychology and climbing and all that we do is so interlinked.
yeah,
It seemed like a
exactly.
perfect opportunity to weave it in.
Yeah, no, man, good call.
Hey, we're kind of running, I mean, over, but definitely up to the end of time here. Is there a number one takeaway you have for our audience? Anything you want to leave us with?
Ooh, I think acknowledging that mindset is one of the most important things to address in climbing. That you can have all the strength and all the technique in the world, but you are possibly held back by mindset more than you might realize. And so, for anyone who is worrying that they don't have much confidence, then the one I'd like to leave everyone with is that everyone has different starting points in natural levels of confidence, and no one's levels of confidence are permanent. Everyone's can be changed through practice or through language habits that we were talking about earlier. So start looking at it, because it's a really, really rewarding one to look at. And aside from that, it would be get strong, have fun, and I'll see you at the walls. Goodbye, everybody.
Louis, thank you again so much. Where can final thing? Where can we connect with you? Where can people
Ooh,
follow along with your journey? Where can they get involved if they're in London or if they want to kind of see what you're doing on a day-to-day basis?
oh, loads of places. So to follow me on Instagram is at Captain Cutloose. And then that's where I do all my professional showing off. Then if you want to follow more coaching content, then Catalyst Climbing and that's just at Catalyst Climbing, is the coaching company. And that'll be it. Oh, obviously the website as well, which would just be www.catalystclimbing.com. If you're interested in lessons, or if you want to check out that membership I was talking about earlier, where you get every week, it's a pretty good membership. You get training plans, you get a Q&A with these pretty awesome big name climbers, and you get access to like nutritionists and physios and mindset coaches. Oh, the mindset coach is Hazel Findlay, so it's a pretty good mindset coach. But yeah, if this is all interesting, check out the membership, or just send me an email if you've got any questions. Yeah, happy to talk about it. I like talking about climbing, as we can see on this interview.
Amazing. I'll put links to everything in the description. And Louis,
Oh, you're a
it's
star,
been a
Andre.
privilege. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been
Man,
a blast.
it's been absolutely lovely. Thank you for inviting me. I'll chat to you again soon, Andre.
Thank you for joining me in that conversation with Louis Parkinson. I know it was a little bit longer than some of our previous episodes, but it just felt like we had so much to discuss. I find Louis' passion for climbing to be infectious, and I love seeing the holistic approach he takes when coaching. As always, if you enjoyed this content and want to see more like it, then please take the time to subscribe to the channel and share this interview with your friends, your training partners, and your teammates. I've been Andrei Mandzuk, and this has been Mountain Mindset. Until next time.